The horizon was barely visible, just a thin line of gold against the endless Montana sky. Dawn's first light painted the fields in amber and shadow, the kind that makes every detail seem significant and every moment feel like a revelation. Lily Morgan wasn't supposed to be there. Not with 2 sleeping toddlers and a peculiar rooster in a wicker basket, trudging along a private dirt road that wasn't marked on any map she owned. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She'd been walking since midnight, following directions scribbled on a faded envelope, her shoulders aching from the weight of the basket and the twins' small backpack. The distant silhouette of Whispering Pines Ranch emerged from the morning mist like a mirage, its weathered barn and modest cabin the only sign of human presence for miles. The letter from her great-aunt Josephine had been specific. When all else fails, find Whispering Pines. The deed is yours now. The mountains will shelter you. 3 days ago, Lily had been a respected kindergarten teacher in Portland, with an apartment she could no longer afford and a reputation in tatters. Now she was a woman on the run with someone else's children and a rooster that hadn't made a sound since they'd left the bus station in Missoula. Just a little further, she whispered to the sleeping twins, their cherubic faces peaceful despite the chaos of the past 72 hours. Emma and Ethan weren't hers by blood, but they had become hers by circumstance and a deathbed promise she couldn't break. The rooster stirred in the basket, its iridescent feathers catching the dawn light. It was a beautiful bird, with plumage that shifted between copper and emerald depending on how the light hit it. "You better be worth all this trouble, Rufus," she murmured, adjusting her grip on the basket's handle. That's when she heard it, the unmistakable crack of a rifle being readied. "That's far enough, ma'am." The voice was deep, controlled, but with an edge sharp enough to freeze Lily in her tracks. She turned slowly, careful not to jostle the twins who still slept soundly in their carrier. The man standing 20 paces away held a rifle casually at his side, not pointed at her but ready nonetheless. His face was partially shadowed by a worn Stetson, but she could make out a strong jaw covered in stubble and eyes the color of the Montana sky at dusk. "This is private property," he said, taking a measured step forward. "And you're a long way from anywhere. A woman with 2 small children should be at this hour." Lily straightened her spine, summoning dignity despite her disheveled appearance. "I'm looking for Whispering Pines Ranch. My great-aunt Josephine Morgan left it to me. I have the deed." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. The man stilled, his posture shifting almost imperceptibly. "Josephine's been gone 3 years." "I know. I only received her letter last week. There were complications." Lily glanced down at the sleeping twins, then back at the stranger. "Are you the caretaker?" A sound somewhere between a scoff and a laugh escaped him. "I'm Jackson Reed. This is my land. Has been since Josephine couldn't manage anymore." Confusion and dismay washed over Lily. There must be some mistake. "I have the deed right here." She reached slowly into her pocket, producing the worn envelope with trembling fingers. Jackson stepped forward, close enough now that Lily could see the weariness etched into the lines around his eyes. He took the envelope, his calloused fingers careful not to touch hers, and scanned the contents with a frown that deepened with each passing second. "This deed is for the north parcel," he said finally. 20 acres that border my ranch, not Whispering Pines itself." The basket at Lily's feet shuddered as Rufus the rooster suddenly stood, his magnificent head emerging to eye Jackson with what could only be described as suspicion. The bird let out a soft, questioning noise that wasn't quite a crow. Jackson's eyebrows rose. "And what's this? Breakfast?" "His name is Rufus," Lily said defensively. "He was Josephine's. The letter said he needed to come home." One of the twins stirred, little Emma blinking awake with the perfect timing of a child determined to complicate adult conversations. Her small face scrunched in momentary confusion before her eyes landed on Jackson. Without a trace of fear, she smiled brilliantly and reached toward him. "Cowboy," she declared with the conviction only a 3-year-old could muster. The rifle lowered completely, and something in Jackson's stern expression softened fractionally. "You've got quite a situation here, Ms. Morgan. Lily Morgan." She shifted, adjusting Emma in her arms as Ethan began to wake as well. "And yes, I'm aware this isn't conventional." Jackson sighed, pushing his hat back to reveal more of his face. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps in his mid-30s, with a scar running along his left temple and eyes that had seen more than they wanted to remember. "The north parcel has a cabin," he said after a long moment. "Nothing fancy. Been empty since Josephine moved into town before she passed. Roof might leak." Hope flickered in Lily's chest. "Can you take us there? It's another mile up that ridge." He nodded toward a pine-covered hill to the east. "Not a walk I'd recommend with two little ones and whatever that bird is supposed to be." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As if on cue, Rufus chose that moment to leap from the basket, his wings flapping dramatically before he landed with unexpected grace at Jackson's feet. The rooster tilted his head, examining the cowboy with uncanny intelligence. "He's a copper Moran," Lily explained. "Josephine bred them. She said this one was special." Jackson and the rooster engaged in what could only be described as a staring contest. Finally, the cowboy shook his head. "Looks more like trouble than special to me." With unexpected swiftness, Rufus pecked at Jackson's boot, then strutted away with what could only be described as indignation. The corner of Jackson's mouth twitched. "Feisty." "Like his owner," Lily replied without thinking. Their eyes met briefly, and something unreadable passed across Jackson's face before he looked away. "Sun's coming up. You and the kids can rest at my place while I check if that cabin's still standing." He hesitated, then added gruffly, "Then we'll figure out what to do with you." "We don't need charity," Lily began, pride stiffening her spine despite the exhaustion threatening to buckle her knees. "It's not charity," Jackson cut her off. "It's basic human decency. And besides," he nodded toward Rufus, who was now strutting in circles around them all, "that bird of yours seems determined to make himself at home on my land." "He's not usually like this," Lily said apologetically. "He's been almost catatonic since we left Portland." "Portland?" Jackson's eyebrows rose. "You came all this way based on a 3-year-old letter from a woman you'd never met?" Lily lifted her chin. "Josephine was my mother's aunt, and when you have nowhere else to go, a distant relative's property in Montana starts to look like salvation." Something in her tone must have communicated the desperation behind her journey, because Jackson's expression shifted from skepticism to reluctant understanding. He slung his rifle over his shoulder and stepped forward, reaching for the heavy basket at Lily's feet. "My truck's just over that rise," he said, nodding toward a gentle slope. "Can the little ones walk that far?" Ethan, now fully awake, was squirming to be put down. "They can walk," Lily confirmed, lowering the boy to his feet while keeping a firm grip on Emma. "They're good travelers." Jackson watched as Ethan immediately toddled toward Rufus, his small hands reaching for the rooster's tail feathers. With surprising gentleness, Jackson intercepted the boy, crouching to meet him at eye level. "Careful, partner," he said softly. "Birds don't much like having their feathers pulled." Ethan stared at Jackson with wide eyes, then nodded solemnly, as if receiving wisdom from an oracle. The exchange was so natural, so unexpectedly tender, that Lily felt something shift in her assessment of the stern-faced rancher. They made their way to Jackson's truck, an aging Ford that had seen better decades but appeared meticulously maintained. Rufus, to Lily's astonishment, followed of his own accord, occasionally pausing to peck at something in the dirt before catching up with an indignant strut. "No car seat," Jackson observed as they reached the vehicle, eyeing the twins with concern. "We lost them in the rush," Lily admitted, the memory of their hasty departure from Portland still raw. "The bus driver made me hold them the whole way." Jackson frowned but said nothing, opening the passenger door and helping Lily settle the twins on her lap. Rufus, proving himself even more peculiar, hopped up onto the truck bed without prompting and settled himself as if he'd been riding in pickup trucks his entire life. The drive to Jackson's ranch house was brief but revealing. The property was extensive, stretching toward distant mountains, with cattle grazing in the early morning light. The house itself was modest but solid, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and windows that caught the sunrise. Nothing ostentatious, but well-maintained and clearly loved. "You run this place alone?" Lily asked as they pulled up to the house. Jackson cut the engine before answering. Mostly. Have a couple of hands that help with the herd during calving and roundup. His tone discouraged further questions. Inside, the house was surprisingly warm and inviting. Simple furnishings, clean lines, and large windows that brought the Montana landscape indoors. A few framed photographs on the mantel caught Lily's attention. An older couple she assumed were Jackson's parents, a younger Jackson in military uniform, and curiously, an elderly woman who bore a striking resemblance to the faded photograph Lily carried of Josephine Morgan. "You knew my great-aunt well," Lily observed, nodding toward the photograph. Jackson paused in the act of filling a kettle. "She was a good neighbor. Tough as they come." He set the kettle on the stove. "Coffee?" "Please," Lily answered, her exhaustion suddenly overwhelming now that she and the twins were somewhere safe. "And maybe some water for the children?" As Jackson moved efficiently around the kitchen, Lily realized that Rufus had somehow made his way into the house and was now perched on a windowsill, observing the proceedings with unnerving focus. "Your bird's inside," Jackson noted without turning around. "I'm sorry," Lily began, moving to retrieve the rooster. "He's not usually this." "Leave him," Jackson interrupted. "Josephine's birds always had run of her place. Guess some things are in the blood." He set a mug of steaming coffee before her, then produced 2 small plastic cups with water for the twins, who had settled on the floor with a wooden toy horse they'd discovered. "Thank you," Lily said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "For all of this." Jackson leaned against the counter, studying her over the rim of his own coffee cup. "You want to tell me what you're running from?" The question, delivered without preamble, startled her. "What makes you think I'm running from something?" "Nobody shows up at dawn with twin toddlers and a rooster unless they're running toward something or away from something," he replied evenly. "And you don't strike me as the type who's chasing dreams." Lily felt her defenses rise. "You don't know anything about me. I know you're exhausted. I know those kids aren't yours by birth, though you care for them like they are. And I know that Rooster means something more than just a pet, or you wouldn't have brought him all this way." Jackson set his mug down. "What I don't know is if whatever you're running from is going to bring trouble to my doorstep." The directness was both refreshing and unsettling. Lily found herself wanting to trust this stranger who had taken them in without many questions, but experience had taught her caution. "Their mother was my best friend," she said finally, watching the twins play. "Claire died 3 months ago. Cancer. Their father was never in the picture. I'm their godmother, and Claire's only family was a brother who's in no position to care for children." Jackson waited, sensing there was more. "I was a kindergarten teacher," Lily continued. "But raising twins on a teacher's salary in Portland isn't possible. And then—" She hesitated. "There was an incident at school. A misunderstanding that was blown out of proportion. I was cleared, but the damage was done. My reputation, my career." She shook her head. "We needed a fresh start. Somewhere far away. And then I found Josephine's letter in a box of my mother's things." "And the rooster?" Jackson prompted. Lily smiled faintly. "Josephine wrote that if I ever came to Montana, I should bring Rufus home. He was in a shelter in Portland. Claire volunteered there. She'd been keeping him for some woman who had to move suddenly. When I mentioned Montana to the shelter director, she practically pushed him into my arms. Said something about fulfilling a promise." Jackson's gaze shifted to Rufus, who was now preening his feathers with dignified concentration. Josephine was known for her unusual birds. Said they were smarter than most people. "He hasn't made a sound since we left Portland," Lily said. "Not one crow." Something like recognition flickered in Jackson's eyes. Josephine had a saying about that. "A silent rooster is a thinking rooster." "What does that even mean?" Lily asked, finding herself smiling despite her exhaustion. Jackson shrugged. "Who knows?" Josephine had her own way of seeing the world. He straightened, setting his empty mug in the sink. "You should rest. There's a bedroom upstairs you can use. I need to check on the North Parcel cabin, see what kind of shape it's in." Lily glanced at the twins. who were now showing signs of fatigue themselves. "Thank you. We won't impose for long." Jackson paused at the door, his expression unreadable. "The north parcel is isolated. No power lines." The cabin was only meant for summer use when Josephine would check her beehives. "Beehives?" Lily echoed weakly. "Don't worry, they've been gone for years." He hesitated, then added, "There's a wood stove, a hand pump for water. It's primitive." "We'll manage," Lily insisted, though uncertainty crept into her voice. Jackson studied her for a long moment, then glanced at Rufus, who had abandoned his window perch to hop onto the kitchen table. The rooster stared back at Jackson with an intensity that seemed almost challenging. "Tell you what," Jackson said finally. "Stay here tonight, rest. Let me make sure the cabin's at least weather-tight before you decide it's where you want to be." Relief washed over Lily, though pride made her resist. "We don't want to intrude." "It's not intrusion if it's an invitation," Jackson replied. Then, with a nod toward Rufus, he added with unexpected humor, "Stay, if it lays tomorrow." The absurdity of the statement, roosters of course didn't lay eggs, broke the tension. Lily found herself laughing, a sound that felt foreign after months of stress and grief. "That's a safe bet," she said, smiling. "But we appreciate the offer." Jackson nodded once, then left, the screen door closing softly behind him. Lily watched through the window as he climbed back into his truck and drove away, his figure silhouetted against the now brilliant Montana morning. Only then did she allow her shoulders to slump, the weight of their journey and uncertain future pressing down upon her. Emma toddled over, leaning against Lily's leg with drooping eyelids. "Cowboy nice," the little girl murmured sleepily. "Yes," Lily agreed softly, stroking Emma's blonde curls. "The cowboy is nice." Rufus, who had been watching the exchange, suddenly hopped down from the table and strutted toward the stairs, pausing at the bottom step to look back at Lily with what seemed like expectation. "I think he's showing us where to go," Lily said to the twins, gathering their few belongings. "Let's follow the rooster." Upstairs they found a simple guest room with a queen-sized bed and clean linens. Sunlight streamed through curtainless windows, illuminating dust motes, dancing in the air. Lily settled the twins in the center of the bed, where they curled together like puppies, and quickly surrendered to exhaustion. Rufus hopped onto a wooden chair in the corner, tucked his head under his wing, and to Lily's amazement, fell asleep as well. She should join them, should take advantage of this unexpected sanctuary to rest, but her mind was racing. What would happen when Jackson returned? Would the North Parcel cabin be livable? And what would they do if it wasn't? Moving to the window, Lily gazed out at the vast Montana landscape stretching toward distant mountains. So different from Portland's urban sprawl, from the life she'd built and lost. Yet something about this place, about the endless sky and rugged beauty, called to something deep within her. "Is this what you felt, Josephine?" she whispered to the memory of a woman she'd never met. "Is this why you stayed?" No answer came, but as Lily finally stretched out beside the sleeping twins, she felt a curious sense of rightness, as if somehow, against all odds, they had found exactly where they needed to be. When she woke hours later, the sun had moved to late afternoon position, casting long shadows across the bedroom floor. The twins still slept soundly, but Rufus was gone. Panic fluttered in Lily's chest as she carefully extracted herself from the bed and moved quickly downstairs. She found Jackson in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, preparing what appeared to be a simple stew. And there on the counter, supervising with imperious attention, sat Rufus. "Your rooster has opinions about my cooking," Jackson said without turning around, somehow sensing her presence. "He has opinions about everything," Lily replied, relief making her voice light. "How long have I been asleep?" "About 6 hours." Jackson nodded toward a clock on the wall. "Little one's still out." Quote, "Like rocks." Lily approached cautiously, peering into the pot Jackson was stirring. "That smells amazing." "Just venison stew. Nothing fancy." He stepped aside, allowing her a better view. "Checked on the North Parcel cabin." Lily tensed, preparing herself for bad news. "And?" "It's standing," Jackson said diplomatically. "Roof's intact, floor's solid. But it's been empty a long time. Critters have moved in and out. Would need a lot of work to be suitable for children." Disappointment washed over Lily, though she'd half expected this. "I see." "There's no rush," Jackson added, surprising her. You can stay here while you figure things out. The ranch hands' quarters are empty until spring roundup. Lily stared at him, searching for the catch. Why would you do that? You don't know us. Jackson was quiet for a moment, focusing on the stew. Finally, he said, I knew Josephine since I was a boy. My father worked her land before she sold the main house to my parents. She was important to this place, to my family. He glanced at Rufus, who was watching the conversation with unnerving focus. And that bird of yours hasn't taken his eyes off me since I got back. It's unsettling. Lily followed his gaze to Rufus, who indeed seemed to be studying Jackson with uncanny intensity. He does seem fixated on you. Josephine always said her birds knew things, Jackson said, sounding uncomfortable with the admission. Called them her feathered judges of character. A memory stirred in Lily's mind. In her letter, she wrote something strange. She said, Rufus will know where you belong. They both looked at the rooster, who chose that moment to ruffle his feathers and emit a soft, almost purring sound. First noise he's made since Portland, Lily observed. Jackson's expression shifted to one of grudging amusement. Well, I'll be damned. A pattering of small feet on the stairs interrupted them. Emma appeared in the doorway, hair mussed from sleep, clutching a small stuffed rabbit. Hungry, she announced without preamble. Jackson reacted with surprising smoothness, setting aside his stirring spoon and crouching to the little girl's level. Stew's almost ready, Miss Emma. Think you can eat like a cowgirl tonight? Emma nodded solemnly, then pointed at Rufus. Chicken. That's Rufus, Lily corrected gently. He's a special rooster. Rooster? Emma repeated, then with perfect toddler logic added. He's watching you, mister. Jackson glanced at the bird with newfound wariness. So he is. Standing, he returned to the stove. Dinner in 10 minutes. There's juice in the fridge if she's thirsty. As Lily helped Emma with a cup of apple juice, she observed Jackson moving around the kitchen with efficient grace. For a man who supposedly lived alone, he seemed comfortable preparing a meal for guests, even tiny ones with specific demands. You're good with children, she noted as he set aside a small portion of stew to cool for the twins. Jackson's movements paused almost imperceptibly. Had some practice, he said simply, and something in his tone discouraged further questions. Ethan's appearance completed their unusual dinner party. The boy was still sleep-warm, his dark curls sticking up at odd angles. Unlike his sister, he regarded Jackson with shy curiosity, hiding partially behind Lily's legs. Hey there, partner, Jackson greeted him, his voice gentling. Ready for some grub? Ethan nodded silently, eyes wide. They ate at the kitchen table, the twins perched on books stacked on chairs, Rufus watching from his counter position. The domesticity of the scene struck Lily as surreal. 24 hours ago, they had been on a bus headed for an uncertain destination, and now they were sharing a home-cooked meal with a stranger who was quickly becoming something else. How long have you owned this ranch? Lily asked, breaking a comfortable silence. It was my parents' place, Jackson replied, helping Emma with a stubborn piece of carrot. They bought the main house from Josephine about 15 years ago, when she decided to downsize to the north parcel. I took over when Dad's health started failing 5 years back. And they're gone. The word was simple but heavy. Mom 3 years ago, Dad last winter. I'm sorry, Lily said softly. It must be lonely, running this place by yourself. Jackson shrugged. Keeps me busy, and the hens come back each season. He glanced out the window at the gathering dusk. It's a good life, simple. Simple sounds wonderful right now, Lily admitted. Jackson studied her for a moment, then asked, What was it? The incident at the school. Lily tensed, but found herself wanting to explain. One of my students, a little boy, had bruises. I reported it, as I'm legally required to do. His father was a prominent businessman, a major donor to the school. He claimed the boy fell during soccer practice. She set down her spoon, the memory still painful. The investigation cleared him. Then suddenly there were rumors about me, that I was unstable, vindictive, seeing abuse where there was none. The administration supported me officially, but the damage was done. Jackson finished. Parents requested their children be moved to other classrooms. Colleagues stopped talking to me. And then Claire died. And I became the twins' guardian. And it all just, she gestured helplessly, became too much. Jackson supplied, his voice holding no judgment. Lily nodded, grateful for his understanding. I couldn't stay there, watching that little boy come to school with hidden bruises while everyone pretended not to see. And I couldn't raise Claire's children in a place where my reputation was destroyed. Jackson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Josephine would have done the same. The simple words, delivered without embellishment, felt like absolution. After dinner, Jackson surprised Lily by producing a wooden box of children's books from a hallway closet. These were mine, he explained, somewhat self-consciously. Mom kept everything. The twins were delighted, and soon all four of them were settled in the living room, Ethan and Emma examining the treasure trove of stories while Lily and Jackson watched from the couch. Rufus had taken up position on the hearth, his feathers gleaming in the soft lamplight. Tomorrow I can show you the north parcel, Jackson offered. Let you decide if it's something you want to take on. What would that entail? Lily asked, watching Emma carefully turn pages of a book about farm animals. The cabin would need a thorough cleaning, some minor repairs. The land itself is good. Water source is reliable, soil's decent. Josephine kept bees and grew herbs there. Made a decent income selling honey and medicinals to folks in town. I don't know the first thing about bees or herbs, Lily admitted. Josephine left journals. They're probably still in the cabin if the mice haven't gotten to them. Jackson leaned back, his posture relaxing slightly. She documented everything. Said knowledge should never die with the knower. Lily smiled at the sentiment. She sounds remarkable. She was, Jackson agreed. Stubborn as hell. Never took no for an answer. Lived life entirely on her own terms. Is that why you're helping us? Lily asked. Because of her? Jackson considered the question, his gaze shifting to the twins who had moved on to building a fort with couch cushions. Partly, he admitted, but mostly because it's the right thing to do. The right thing is rare these days, Lily murmured. Shouldn't be, Jackson replied simply. As the evening deepened into night, a comfortable routine emerged. The twins were bathed in the farmhouse's deep sink, dressed in t-shirts of Jackson's that hung to their ankles, and settled back in the guest room bed. Rufus, to everyone's amusement, perched on the bedpost like a guardian, his bright eyes reflecting the soft glow of the nightlight Jackson had unearthed from another closet. He acts like he's never leaving, Jackson observed dryly as they descended the stairs. Would that be so terrible? Lily asked, the question escaping before she could consider its implications. Jackson paused on the landing, turning to face her. In the dim hallway light, his expression was unreadable. Depends on what he were talking about. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Jackson continued down the stairs, leaving Lily to follow, her heart beating a rhythm she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. In the living room, Jackson poured 2 glasses of amber liquid and offered one to Lily. Bourbon, he explained. Josephine's recipe, actually. She taught my father. Lily accepted the glass, their fingers brushing briefly. To Josephine, then, she proposed, raising her glass slightly. To new beginnings, Jackson countered softly. They drank in companionable silence, the day's events settling around them like dust after a storm. Through the window, the Montana night stretched vast and star-filled, so different from Portland's light-polluted skies. Why did you really let us stay? Lily asked finally, setting her empty glass on the coffee table. The truth. Jackson studied his bourbon for a long moment before answering. When you've seen what I've seen, done what I've done, you learn to recognize when someone needs a safe harbor. He glanced up, meeting her gaze directly. And sometimes, providing that harbor helps heal your own wounds too. The admission, so honest and unexpected, caught Lily off guard. The military, Jackson nodded. 2 tours in Afghanistan, came home different, came home broken in ways that don't show. Is that why you're alone out here? A rueful smile touched his lips. Easier to deal with cattle than people most days. They don't ask questions, don't expect you to be someone you were before. Lily understood that sentiment all too well. And yet here we are, imposing on your solitude. Strangely enough, Jackson said slowly, it doesn't feel like an imposition. The quiet admission hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement that something unexpected was happening in this remote Montana farmhouse. Tomorrow, Jackson said, standing abruptly as if uncomfortable with the direction of his thoughts. We'll see about that cabin. Get you settled properly. Of course, Lily agreed, though a part of her already dreaded leaving the warmth and safety of this house, of this man's unexpected kindness. Jackson hesitated, then added, unless that rooster of yours decides to perform a miracle and lay an egg. The joke, delivered in his serious tone, startled a laugh from Lily. I wouldn't put it past Rufus to try, just to prove a point. Josephine's birds were always full of surprises, Jackson conceded with the ghost of a smile. Good night, Lily Morgan. Good night, Jackson Reed. As she climbed the stairs to join the sleeping twins, Lily felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope, fragile but persistent, like the first green shoot after a harsh winter. In the guest room, Rufus was still perched on the bedpost, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. As Lily settled beside the twins, the rooster made a soft, contented sound. I know, Lily whispered to him. I feel it too. Like somehow, we found our way home. Rufus ruffled his feathers in what seemed like agreement, and for the first time since Portland, Lily fell asleep without fear shadowing her dreams. Morning arrived with a soft, golden glow that seemed unique to Montana, filtering through the curtainless windows and painting patterns across the worn wooden floor. Lily woke to find Emma curled against her side, thumb tucked firmly in her mouth, while Ethan had somehow migrated to the foot of the bed, starfish spread across the quilt. But Rufus was nowhere to be seen. Panic fluttered in her chest as she carefully extricated herself from Emma's grasp. The rooster had been her one tangible connection to Josephine, a strange talisman that had guided them to this place. Losing him now felt ominous. She padded downstairs in borrowed socks, following the scent of coffee and the sound of low voices. In the kitchen, she paused at the threshold, taking in the unexpected scene before her. Jackson sat at the table, coffee mug in hand, seemingly deep in conversation with Rufus, who was perched on the opposite chair as if he belonged there. The rooster was making soft clucking sounds while Jackson nodded, his expression serious, as if genuinely considering whatever the bird was saying. Do you two often have breakfast meetings? Lily asked, unable to keep the amusement from her voice. Jackson looked up, the hint of embarrassment crossing his features before he masked it with his usual stoicism. He was pecking at the door at dawn, figured he was hungry. And the conversation? Man gets lonely enough. He'll talk to anything, Jackson replied with a shrug, but there was a lightness in his tone that hadn't been there yesterday. Coffee's fresh. Lily helped herself to a mug, noting the table was already set for 4, with 2 smaller plates for the twins. You've been busy. Early riser, Jackson explained, standing to retrieve a pan of what appeared to be biscuits from the oven. Ranch habit. The twins will be up soon, Lily warned. They're like tiny hurricanes in the morning. Jackson seemed unfazed. My mom ran a daycare out of this house for 15 years. These walls have seen worse than 2 toddlers. This casual revelation of Jackson's past surprised Lily. She tried to imagine the solitary man as a child, sharing his home with a rotating cast of other children. Is that why you're so comfortable with Emma and Ethan? Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or a memory he preferred not to revisit. Like I said, had some practice. Before Lily could probe further, the thunder of small feet announced the twins' awakening. They burst into the kitchen with the unrestrained energy of well-rested children, Emma immediately climbing onto Lily's lap, while Ethan approached Rufus with cautious fascination. Careful? Jackson cautioned, setting a plate of scrambled eggs on the table. He might look dignified, but he's still a rooster. They can peck when startled. To everyone's surprise, Rufus lowered his head toward Ethan, allowing the boy to gently stroke his iridescent feathers. The bird's eyes closed in what appeared to be contentment. Well, I'll be damned, Jackson murmured. Pardon my language. Damned, Ethan repeated happily, causing Lily to stifle a groan. sorry," Jackson said, looking genuinely contrite. "Been a while since I had to watch my words." "It's fine," Lily assured him, helping Emma into her chair. "They've heard worse on the bus here. Right now, we're just focusing on the big things. Kindness, sharing, not biting each other over toys. Sensible priorities." Jackson agreed, serving the children small portions of eggs and quartered biscuits. The domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on Lily. Here they were, 4 strangers and a rooster, sharing breakfast as if they'd been doing it for years. The ease of it was both comforting and unsettling. "After breakfast, we can head out to the north parcel," Jackson said, pouring milk into sippy cups he'd somehow produced. "I've got some supplies in the truck, cleaning stuff, basic tools. Thought we could assess what needs doing." "You don't need to do all this," Lily began, but Jackson cut her off with a shake of his head. "Neighbors help neighbors out here," he said simply. "It's how Montana works." "Is that what we are? Neighbors?" The question slipped out before Lily could reconsider its implications. Jackson's eyes met hers across the table. "For now," he said quietly. "Unless that rooster lays an egg." The reference to his odd statement from the previous day hung between them, both knowing the impossibility of the condition and yet somehow acknowledging that stranger things had happened. As if on cue, Rufus let out a sound, not quite a crow, more like a contemplative cluck, and hopped down from his chair to strut purposefully around the kitchen. "He's certainly made himself at home," Lily observed, watching the rooster inspect every corner of the room. "Josephine's birds were always like that," Jackson replied, a fond note creeping into his voice. "She claimed they were descended from some ancient breed that was practically human, used to talk to them like they understood every word." "And did they?" Jackson's expression turned thoughtful. "Hard to say, but they always seemed to be exactly where they needed to be, doing exactly what needed doing." After breakfast, Jackson produced a box of children's clothes from the attic. "Donations for the church drive, but they've been sitting there for months. That miraculously included items in the twins' sizes." Lily accepted this continued kindness with growing wonder at the man who claimed to prefer solitude, yet seemed to anticipate their every need. The drive to the north parcel took them through rolling hills covered in autumn gold grass, the distant mountains providing a majestic backdrop. Rufus rode in the truck bed again, his head held high as if surveying his domain. "The property line starts at that old fence post," Jackson explained, pointing to a weathered marker adorned with a rusted metal star. "Runs up to the ridge line there, follows the creek down, and meets back at the road." Lily tried to absorb the vastness of it. 20 acres had sounded modest on paper, but seeing it spread before her, her land, her possibility, was overwhelming. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Good grazing," Jackson agreed, misinterpreting her awe. "Josephine, let me run cattle here in exchange for maintaining the fences." "I don't know anything about cattle," Lily admitted. Jackson glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Arrangement could continue, if you wanted." Before Lily could respond, the cabin came into view. It was smaller than she'd imagined, a one-room structure with a covered porch and a stone chimney. Weather-beaten but sturdy, it nestled against a stand of pines as if seeking their protection. "Oh," Lily said softly, a mixture of disappointment and relief coloring the word. The cabin was tiny, certainly too small for a woman, and 2 growing children as a permanent residence. Yet there was something charming about its rustic simplicity, something that whispered of new beginnings. Jackson parked the truck, and the twins scrambled out, immediately drawn to a patch of wildflowers that had somehow survived the autumn chill. Rufus followed, strutting protectively behind them. "It's not much," Jackson acknowledged, coming to stand beside Lily. "Josephine only used it in summers, after she sold the main house to my parents." "Why did she keep this parcel?" Lily asked, approaching the cabin slowly, as if it might disappear if she moved too quickly. "She said it was where the best honey came from." Jackson stepped onto the porch, testing a loose board with his boot, something about the way the sun hit the ridge and the types of wildflowers that grew here. He produced a key from his pocket and unlocked the door, which creaked open with dramatic protest. Inside, dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that penetrated the grimy windows. The space was simple: a main room with a small cook stove, a table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with jars and books, and a curtained alcove that presumably contained a bed. "Needs work," Jackson stated the obvious, running a hand along a dust-covered shelf. "But the structure's sound." Lily moved further inside, drawn to the books that lined one wall. Leather-bound journals. Dozens of them, their spines marked with dates spanning decades. She pulled one out carefully, opening to a random page covered in elegant flowing script. "The black-eyed Susans bloomed early this year," she read aloud. "The bees are especially drawn to them at dawn when the dew still clings to the petals. Have collected 3 pounds of honey today with notes of sunshine and late summer storms." "That's Josephine," Jackson confirmed, a smile touching his lips. Everything was poetry to her, even beekeeping. Lily replaced the journal reverently. She documented everything? Every flower, every batch of honey, every remedy she created. Jackson gestured to the jars on the shelves. She was known for her healing salves. People came from counties over. Outside, the twins' laughter mingled with Rufus's occasional clucks. Through the window, Lily could see them chasing butterflies while the rooster supervised from a sunny rock. "I can't raise children here," she said finally, voicing the reality they both recognized. "Not as it is." Jackson nodded, no surprise in his expression. "Would take considerable work to winterize it. Plumbing, better insulation, expansion." "I don't have the money for that kind of renovation," Lily admitted. "Or the skills." "What will you do?" It was the question she'd been avoiding since arriving in Montana. What would she do? Where would they go? The meager savings she'd brought would barely last a month in even the cheapest motel. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Find work in town, maybe. Rent something temporarily until I figure out what to do with this place." Jackson was quiet for a moment, seemingly wrestling with some internal debate. Finally, he said, "There's another option." Lily looked at him questioningly. "The ranch hands' quarters," he continued, "separate from the main house but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, kitchen, full bath. It sits empty 8 months of the year." "Jackson, I couldn't." "You could help around the ranch," he interrupted. "I'm short-handed until spring roundup, nothing too strenuous. Feeding chickens, gathering eggs, maybe helping with paperwork. I'm terrible at bookkeeping." The offer was tempting. Too tempting. A safe place for the twins. Work that would allow her to contribute rather than simply accept charity. "Why would you do this?" Lily asked, needing to understand. "You barely know us." Jackson's gaze shifted to the window, to the twins playing outside. "I know what it's like to need a fresh start," he said quietly. "And Josephine would have my hide if I let her grandniece struggle when I had the means to help." There was more to it than that, Lily suspected, but she didn't press. "It would be temporary," she said instead. "Just until I can make proper arrangements." "Of course," Jackson agreed, but something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced of the arrangement's transience either. They spent the next hour exploring the cabin and its surroundings. Jackson pointed out the remains of Josephine's beehives, now weathered and empty, and the herb garden that had gone wild in her absence. Despite the neglect, there was a sense of potential about the place, of dormant possibility waiting to be awakened. The twins, exhausted from their exploration, were drooping by the time they loaded back into the truck. Rufus, however, seemed energized, strutting around the cabin one last time as if making mental notes before hopping into the truck bed with newfound vigor. "That bird acts like he's been here before," Jackson observed as they drove back toward the main ranch. "Maybe he has," Lily replied, remembering Josephine's cryptic instruction to bring Rufus home. Jackson glanced at her, then back at the road. Josephine bred unusual birds, had theories about genetics and memory that most folks dismissed as eccentricity. "And what did you think?" "I think," Jackson said carefully, "that there are more mysteries in this world than we give credit for, and that Josephine Morgan understood some of them better than most." Back at the ranch, the day settled into an unexpectedly comfortable routine. While the twins napped, Jackson showed Lily the ranch hands' quarters, a tidy bungalow about 50 yards from the main house. simple but well-maintained and considerably more spacious than the north parcel cabin. "It's perfect," Lily admitted, running a hand along the kitchen counter. "But I still feel like we're imposing." "Can't impose when you're working for your keep," Jackson countered. "Besides, this place has been empty too long. Buildings need people in them, or they start to forget their purpose." The philosophical statement surprised Lily, another glimpse of the depth behind Jackson's taciturn exterior. "Speaking of work," he continued, "thought I might show you around the operation this afternoon, get you familiar with the daily routine." "I'd like that," Lily said, meaning it. The prospect of having purpose, of contributing, eased the discomfort of accepting his help. The ranch tour revealed the scope of Jackson's operation, modest by Montana standards, he explained, but substantial nonetheless. 60 head of cattle, a small flock of chickens, 2 working horses, and fields of hay that had recently been cut and baled for winter feed. "It's a lot for one person," Lily observed as they walked the perimeter of the barn. "Used to be my father and brother and me," Jackson said, his tone neutral but his eyes revealing a hint of old pain. "Dad's heart gave out 3 years ago." "Matt." "My brother. He left for college and never came back. Got a job in Chicago, married a city girl. They visit at Christmas sometimes." The simple explanation contained volumes of unspoken history, of choices made and paths diverged. Lily found herself wanting to know more about the family that had fractured, leaving Jackson alone with a legacy he hadn't chosen but clearly honored. "And your mother?" she prompted gently. "Cancer. 5 years back." His voice softened. "She loved this place. Called it, quote, heaven with better views." They paused at the chicken coop, where a dozen hens scratched and pecked in the afternoon sun. Rufus, who had been following at a respectful distance, suddenly perked up, his magnificent head tilting with interest. "Probably not a good idea," Jackson warned, noticing the rooster's attention. "These ladies have their own pecking order. New rooster might cause chaos." But Rufus merely strutted along the perimeter of the fenced area, the hens watching him with what Lily could only describe as collective fascination. "I've never seen them so quiet," Jackson remarked. "Usually cluck up a storm when a strange rooster's around." "Maybe they recognize him somehow," Lily suggested. "If he's related to Josephine's birds." Jackson shook his head in amused disbelief. That would be quite a memory. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Jackson taught Lily the basics of feeding the chickens and collecting eggs, tasks she could easily manage with the twins in tow. He showed her his rudimentary bookkeeping system, paper ledgers and receipts stored in shoeboxes that desperately needed organization. "I was never good at this part," he admitted. "Dad handled the business side. After he died, I just sort of kept the lights on." "I can help with this," Lily offered, seeing an opportunity to use her organizational skills. "I kept all the records for my classroom, budgets for supplies, that sort of thing." Relief flickered across Jackson's face. That would be helpful. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, they returned to the main house to find the twins awake and engrossed in a pile of wooden blocks Jackson had unearthed from another closet. Rufus supervised from atop the sofa, his posture that of a benevolent king overseeing his subjects. "He really does act like he owns the place," Jackson observed, but the irritation in his voice was belied by the hint of amusement in his eyes. "We can move to the bunkhouse tomorrow," Lily offered, suddenly aware they had spent another full day imposing on Jackson's hospitality. "No rush," he replied too quickly. Then, more measured. "Might as well get it properly cleaned first. Been empty a while." Dinner that evening was a collaborative effort, Lily preparing a simple pasta dish, while Jackson made a salad from garden vegetables he claimed needed eating before they went bad. The domesticity of it should have felt forced or awkward, but instead settled over them with surprising ease, as if they'd been sharing kitchen space for years rather than days. "I make a mean lasagna," Lily found herself saying as they washed dishes side by side. It was Claire's favorite. She said it was better than therapy after a bad day. "Haven't had homemade lasagna since Mom was alive," Jackson replied, his shoulder briefly brushing hers as he reached for another plate. Matt's wife is vegetarian, so when they visit, it's all tofu and things. The slight disdain in his voice made Lily laugh. Not a fan of modern cuisine. I'm a simple meat and potatoes man, Jackson admitted, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, though I'm not opposed to being convinced otherwise. The statement held a hint of flirtation that surprised them both. Jackson cleared his throat and focused intently on drying a water glass. Later, after the twins were bathed and settled for the night, Rufus once again assuming his guardian position on the bedpost, Lily found Jackson on the porch, nursing a glass of bourbon and watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. "Mind some company?" she asked hesitantly. Jackson shifted over on the porch swing, a silent invitation. Lily sat beside him, accepting the glass he offered from a small side table. "I used to do this with my dad," Jackson said after a comfortable silence. "Count the stars as they appeared. First one to spot Orion got to choose breakfast the next morning. Who usually won? Dad, when I was little. Then me, when my eyes were better than his." A fond smile touched his lips at the memory. "Always chose biscuits and gravy." "Emma and Ethan love the stars," Lily said. "Claire used to take them camping in her backyard. They'd fall asleep counting shooting stars." The mention of the twins' mother brought a question to Jackson's eyes, one he seemed hesitant to voice. "It's okay," Lily encouraged. "You can ask." "What happened to their father?" The question was gentle, respectful. Lily sighed, swirling the bourbon in her glass. "Claire never told anyone who he was. Not even me, and I was her best friend since kindergarten. Just said he was someone passing through, not meant to stay." She paused, memories washing over her. She found out she was pregnant after he was gone. Never tried to find him, said the babies were hers, a gift she hadn't expected but couldn't imagine living without. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was," Lily agreed, blinking back unexpected tears. "Stubborn, fierce, loyal to a fault. Would have done anything for those kids. Including entrusting them to you," Jackson observed quietly. "That was the easy part," Lily admitted. "Loving them. It's figuring out how to provide for them, how to give them stability. That's kept me up nights." Jackson was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains now silhouetted against the darkening sky. "Sometimes stability comes from unexpected places," he said finally. "Josephine used to say that roots don't care what ground they're in, as long as there's room to grow and reasons to stay." The philosophical observation hung between them in the cool evening air, laden with implications neither was quite ready to voice. "Why did you really invite us to stay?" Lily asked, echoing her question from the previous night. The full truth this time. Jackson took a slow sip of his bourbon, seemingly gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was low and measured. "When I came back from Afghanistan, I was broken. Not physically, but inside. Couldn't sleep, couldn't connect with people. Dad was already sick by then, Mom overwhelmed with his care. I was no help to anyone." He paused, his fingers tightening around his glass. "Josephine found me one night, sitting on this very porch, contemplating things no man should contemplate. She didn't say a word about my state of mind. Just handed me a jar of honey and said, 'Some sweetness returns to us what the world has taken away.'" The simple story revealed volumes about both Josephine and Jackson, about the invisible wounds he carried and the woman who had seen past them. "She checked on me every day that summer," he continued, "brought me projects, things to do with my hands. Said idle hands give troubled minds too much room to wander. By fall, I was functioning again. By winter, I was running the ranch while Dad recovered from his first heart attack." "She saved you," Lily said softly. Jackson nodded once. "In every way that matters." He turned to face her fully, his eyes reflecting the porch light. "So when I saw you standing there at dawn, 2 sleeping children and a rooster in tow, looking like you'd carried the weight of the world to my doorstep, I heard Josephine's voice as clear as if she were standing beside me. Some debts can only be repaid forward," Jackson read. The honesty of the confession, the vulnerability it revealed, touched something deep within Lily. Without thinking, she reached for his hand, her fingers wrapping around his calloused palm. "Thank you," she whispered, "for telling me. For everything." Jackson's hand turned in hers, his fingers intertwining with her own in a gesture that felt both protective and seeking protection. 2 wounded souls, finding unexpected solace in each other's company. Above them, the first stars of Orion blinked into existence, unnoticed by either as they sat in comfortable silence, connected by touch and shared understanding, while the vast Montana night unfolded around them like a promise. The days at Whispering Pines Ranch fell into a rhythm that felt both new and, somehow ancient, as if the patterns they created had been waiting for them all along. October painted the Montana landscape in amber and gold, each morning crisp with the promise of the approaching winter, each evening bringing earlier darkness and more brilliant stars. True to his word, Jackson had helped Lily and the twins move into the ranch hand's quarters after that second night. The small bungalow quickly transformed from an impersonal space to a home, filled with treasures unearthed from various corners of the ranch. A patchwork quilt that had belonged to Jackson's mother, children's books with yellowed pages, mismatched dishes that nevertheless created a charming table setting. Lily had expected the transition to feel temporary, a stopgap until she could determine their next move. Instead, with each passing day, she found herself putting down tentative roots. The twins, especially, blossomed in the wide-open spaces of the ranch, their city-bred caution giving way to the uninhibited joy of children who had discovered a natural playground. On this particular morning, 3 weeks into their Montana adventure, Lily stood at the kitchen window watching Emma and Ethan in the yard, bundled against the autumn chill as they solemnly fed the chickens under Jackson's patient supervision. Rufus strutted nearby, his role somewhere between overseer and bodyguard. The rooster had become an unofficial ambassador between the two households. He spent mornings with Lily and the twins, afternoons exploring the North Parcel, which they visited regularly, and evenings with Jackson, often perched on the back of a chair while the rancher worked on his accounts. "You still haven't crowed," Lily murmured, watching the proud bird inspect the children's work. "What are you waiting for?" As if hearing her thoughts, Rufus turned toward the window, his intelligent eyes meeting hers for a moment before he returned his attention to the twins. The sound of approaching tires drew Lily outside, curious about unexpected visitors in this remote location. A battered pickup truck with the local veterinarian's logo painted on the door pulled up beside the barn. "Morning, Dr. Chen," Jackson called, waving the older man over. Right on time. The veterinarian, a compact Asian man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, approached with his medical bag. "These must be the famous twins I've been hearing about," he said, smiling at the children who regarded him with wide-eyed curiosity. "And you must be Lily," he continued, extending his hand. "Jackson's told me all about you. I'm David Chen, vet, gossip, and self-appointed social coordinator for our little community." Lily shook his hand, warmed by his friendly manner. "Nice to meet you. I didn't realize we were expecting a vet visit." "Annual checkups for the cattle," Jackson explained, brushing hay from his jeans. "And I thought David might take a look at your rooster. Make sure he's healthy." "My last appointment with one of Josephine's birds," Dr. Chen said, his gaze finding Rufus, who had positioned himself at a dignified distance. "Though I have to say, I'm surprised to see one of her special breed again. Thought they were all gone." "Special breed?" Lily questioned. Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with Jackson. Josephine was quite the amateur geneticist. Bred roosters for specific traits: intelligence, longevity, distinctive coloring. "This fellow looks like her copper Moran's line. They were her pride and joy." "He hasn't crowed once since we found him," Lily said, watching as Rufus approached Dr. Chen with what could only be described as cautious respect. "Josephine had theories about that," the vet replied, crouching to examine the rooster, who submitted to his gentle handling with unusual patience. "Said some birds save their voices for when it truly matters." Jackson cleared his throat. "David, could you look at that heifer in the south pasture while you're here? The one that was limping yesterday." "Of course," Dr. Chen agreed, finishing his examination of Rufus. "Your rooster is in perfect health, Ms. Morgan. Extraordinary specimen, actually. Josephine would be pleased." As Jackson led the vet toward the pasture, Lily caught a meaningful look passing between the men, as if they were privy to information she wasn't. Before she could question it, Emma tugged at her hand. "Lily, I'm hungry," the little girl announced with toddler directness. "Me too," Ethan chimed in, never one to be outdone by his sister. "Let's get some lunch then," Lily said, pushing her curiosity aside to focus on the children. "How about grilled cheese?" The mundane task of preparing lunch centered her, as it always did. 3 weeks in Montana had already changed her in subtle ways. Her hands, once smooth and teacher-soft, now showed the beginnings of calluses from gathering eggs and helping Jackson with minor repairs around the ranch. Her skin had taken on a healthy glow from days spent outdoors, and she'd noticed her city clothes hanging looser as ranch work toned muscles she hadn't known existed. More profound were the internal changes. The constant anxiety that had been her companion since Claire's death had eased, replaced by a quiet confidence in her ability to adapt, to provide, to create a life for the twins out of unlikely circumstances. After lunch and the twins' nap, Lily decided to visit the North Parcel. These excursions had become a regular part of her week, usually with the twins and often with Jackson. But today she felt drawn to go alone, to spend time with the legacy Josephine had left her. "I can watch the little ones," Jackson offered when she mentioned her plan. "David's going to be a while with the herd. We were going to check on the new fence posts by the creek anyway." Lily hesitated, still unaccustomed to accepting help so readily. "Are you sure? They can be a handful." Jackson's expression softened, the way it always did when he looked at the twins. "We'll be fine. Emma's helping me name the new calves, and Ethan has important rock collecting to do." The easy way he incorporated the children into ranch life, finding age-appropriate ways for them to feel involved and valued, never failed to touch Lily's heart. "Thank you," she said simply. The drive to the North Parcel took only minutes, but always felt like crossing into another world. Though still part of the ranch's expansive landscape, the 20 acres had a different character, wilder, less tamed, with the small cabin nestled against the pines like a secret waiting to be discovered. Lily had been slowly reclaiming the space over the past weeks. The cabin interior was now clean, its windows washed to let in the autumn light, its shelves organized with Josephine's journals arranged by date. The herb garden had been cleared of the most aggressive weeds, revealing perennials that had stubbornly survived years of neglect. Today, she had come with a specific purpose. After meeting Dr. Chen and hearing his reference to Josephine's special breed of roosters, Lily was determined to learn more about Rufus and his connection to this place. Inside the cabin, she went directly to the journals, selecting those from the most recent years of Josephine's life. Settling into the rocking chair she'd cleaned and repaired, Lily began to read. Hours passed as she immersed herself in Josephine's world, the elegant handwriting guiding her through seasons of beekeeping, herb growing, and most intriguingly, bird breeding. The journals revealed a woman of remarkable intelligence and unorthodox beliefs, someone who had walked the line between scientific method and intuitive knowledge. One passage in particular caught Lily's attention. "The copper moran egg has hatched today, the last of this special line. I've named him Rufus for his magnificent coloring. There's something in his eyes already, a watchfulness beyond ordinary birds. He is the culmination of 20 years of careful breeding, carrying all the traits I've selected for: intelligence, loyalty, the uncanny ability to sense character and intention. More importantly, he carries the memory of this land in his blood. When the time comes, he will find his way home, and with him, perhaps the one who needs this place as much as it needs them." Lily read the passage twice, her pulse quickening. The entry was dated just over 3 years ago, shortly before Josephine's death. Could this Rufus be the same bird now strutting around Jackson's ranch? The timeline matched. Rufus would be 3 years old, still young for a rooster. And the shelter had said he'd been left there by a woman who had to move suddenly. Perhaps someone who had been caring for Josephine's birds after her death? Further entries detailed Josephine's unorthodox breeding program, her theories about genetic memory, and her belief that certain animals could serve as guides or messengers. In her final journal, growing progressively weaker from the illness that would claim her life, Josephine had written, "I've arranged for Rufus to be sent to a sanctuary in Portland. A strange location, perhaps, but the bird will know when and how to return when needed. He is the keeper of this land's secrets, the guardian of its future. My time here is ending, but the North Parcel must continue its purpose as a sanctuary, a healing place. I've left instructions with my attorney to hold the deed until the right person appears, someone who needs healing as much as they need a home. Rufus will know them. Lily closed the journal, her mind racing. The coincidence seemed too perfect, too orchestrated. She had found Rufus, or perhaps he had found her, at precisely the moment when she had needed an escape, a destination, a purpose. "Did you plan this, Josephine?" she whispered to the empty cabin. "Did you somehow know I would need this place?" The lengthening shadows reminded her of the time. Gathering the journals she wanted to study further, Lily locked the cabin and headed back to the truck. As she drove, her thoughts swirled with possibilities. Was she reading too much into Josephine's eccentric writings? Or was there something genuinely extraordinary about Rufus and his arrival in her life? When she returned to the ranch, the scene that greeted her momentarily pushed aside her philosophical questions. Jackson sat on the porch steps, a twin on each side of him, reading from a weathered children's book. Rufus perched on the railing, his attention fixed on the story as if he understood every word. The tableau was so perfectly domestic, so unexpectedly right, that Lily found herself blinking back tears. In just 3 weeks, this taciturn rancher had opened not just his home but his heart to her broken little family. "Lily!" Emma spotted her first, scrambling off the step to race toward her. "We helped with the cows." "Did you now?" Lily laughed, scooping the little girl into her arms. "Were they big?" "Enormous," Jackson confirmed, standing with Ethan's hand tucked trustingly in his. "These two are natural ranchers. Didn't spook the heifers at all." "Jackson says I can ride a horse when I'm bigger," Ethan announced, his usual shyness forgotten in his excitement. "A very gentle horse," Jackson clarified, meeting Lily's eyes with a warmth that had been appearing more frequently these days. And not for a few years yet. The casual reference to a future, years from now, in which they would all still be connected, sent a flutter through Lily's chest. They had been careful to maintain the fiction that their arrangement was temporary, yet increasingly their conversations included references to next spring, or when winter ends, or once the twins are a bit older. "Find anything interesting at the cabin?" Jackson asked as they made their way inside, the evening chill driving them toward the warmth of the house. Lily hesitated, unsure how to explain her discoveries without sounding fanciful. "Actually, yes. I've been reading Josephine's journals. She wrote about Rufus." Jackson's steps faltered slightly. "Did she now?" "You knew, didn't you?" Lily realized suddenly. "You and Dr. Chen. You knew this was one of Josephine's special birds." Jackson had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I suspected from the moment I saw him. The coloring is distinctive. And his behavior, well, Josephine's birds were always different. When I saw how he took to you and the twins right away, I was almost certain." "Why didn't you say anything?" He shrugged, helping Ethan remove his jacket. "Would have sounded crazy. Hey, that rooster of yours might be a specially bred bird my neighbor thought could judge character and guide people to where they're meant to be." Put that way, it did sound absurd. Yet the evidence was compelling. Rufus's appearance in Portland, his immediate acceptance of Lily and the twins, his strange behavior since arriving at the ranch. Josephine's journal suggests she believed Rufus would lead the right person to the north parcel, Lily said, keeping her voice low as the twins became absorbed in a pile of toys in the living room. "That he had some kind of, I don't know, mission." "Josephine believed a lot of things most folks would find hard to swallow," Jackson replied carefully. "But I've learned not to discount her ideas too quickly. She had a way of being right about the strangest things." They moved into the kitchen, the conversation pausing as they fell into their now familiar dinner preparation routine. Jackson started the rice cooker while Lily seasoned chicken for the oven. They worked in comfortable tandem, moving around each other with the ease of much longer acquaintance. "Do you think it's possible?" Lily asked finally, unable to let the subject drop. "That Rufus somehow knew? That this wasn't all just coincidence?" Jackson considered the question as he chopped vegetables for a salad. "I think," he said slowly, "that the world is full of mysteries we don't understand, and that sometimes the explanations we reach for, fate, destiny, divine intervention, are just our way of making sense of patterns too complex for us to fully comprehend. The philosophical response surprised her, revealing again the depth beneath Jackson's pragmatic exterior. "That said," he continued, a small smile touching his lips, "if any bird could orchestrate a cross-country journey to reunite a lost soul with a healing place, it would be one of Josephine's roosters." The simple acknowledgement of the possibility, however remote, comforted Lily. Whether by design or chance, she and the twins had found their way to this ranch, to Jackson, to a life that was beginning to feel like it could be theirs. Dinner that evening was filled with the twins' animated recounting of their adventures with the cattle, their vocabulary already shifting to include ranch terms picked up from Jackson. Heifers and pasture and roundup peppered their toddler speech, drawing fond smiles from both adults. After the children were bathed and settled for the night, in their own beds at the bunkhouse, with Rufus assuming his now customary position as nocturnal guardian, Lily returned to the main house, where Jackson waited on the porch with their usual evening bourbon. These nighttime conversations had become precious to Lily, a space where they could speak freely without little ears listening, where they could be simply a man and a woman discovering the unexpected connection growing between them. "Rufus," Lily confirmed, unable to contain her laughter at the sight of the rooster parading through the harvest festival as if he'd been specially invited. Jackson appeared at her side, shaking his head in disbelief. "Told you he makes his own decisions." "But the ranch is 5 miles from town," Lily exclaimed. "How did he even find us?" Josephine always said her birds had an uncanny sense of direction, Dr. Chen mused, watching as Rufus inspected a display of prize-winning vegetables with apparent critical interest. "This one seems determined to live up to her claims." The rooster's appearance created a stir of excitement, especially among the older residents who had known Josephine and her famous birds. Soon Rufus was the center of attention, receiving treats and admiration with dignified acceptance. "Never thought I'd see one of Josephine's special roosters again," an elderly woman remarked, watching Rufus with misty-eyed affection. She claimed they were smarter than most people she knew. Looking at some folks around here, she might have been right. By mid-afternoon, the initial novelty of their presence had worn off, allowing them to enjoy the festival more naturally. Jackson gradually reclaimed his place in the community he'd withdrawn from, accepting invitations to judge the horse competitions and discuss cattle prices with neighboring ranchers. Lily found herself drawn into conversations with local mothers, many of whom expressed delight at the news she had been a kindergarten teacher. "We lost our early childhood educator last spring," explained Sarah Miller, a capable-looking woman in her 40s. "Been making do with a rotating schedule of parent volunteers, but it's not the same. The younger kids especially need consistency." "That must be challenging," Lily sympathized, watching as Emma and Ethan played with a group of local children, their initial shyness completely forgotten. "The school board's been advertising the position for months," Sarah continued, a speculative gleam in her eye. "Just saying, if you were looking to put down roots, there might be an opportunity there." The casual suggestion sent Lily's thoughts spinning in unexpected directions. She hadn't considered returning to teaching, especially not so soon after the disaster in Portland. Yet the idea held undeniable appeal, using her skills again, contributing to this community that had welcomed them so warmly. "I'll keep that in mind," she said carefully, unwilling to commit but unable to dismiss the possibility entirely. As afternoon mellowed toward evening, lanterns were lit around the square, casting a warm glow over the continuing festivities. A small band set up near the gazebo, and couples began to gather for dancing. "Quite a day," Jackson commented, finding Lily watching the twins play a ring-toss game with new friends. "How are you holding up?" "Surprisingly well," she admitted. "Everyone's been so welcoming. It's not what I expected." "Small towns can close ranks against outsiders," Jackson acknowledged. "But they can also open their hearts when they choose to. Especially when you come with a connection to someone they respected." "Is that why they've been so kind to us? Because of Josephine?" Jackson's gaze turned thoughtful. "Partly. But it's also who you are, Lily. How you are with the twins. How you've adapted to ranch life without complaint. How you've treated everyone today with genuine interest." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words. People recognize authenticity when they see it. The simple compliment warmed her more than the most elaborate flattery could have. Before she could respond, the band struck up a lively tune, and Jackson glanced toward the dancers with an expression Lily couldn't quite read. "They're playing the first waltz," he said, a hint of something like nervousness in his voice. "It's tradition at the Harvest Festival. My parents used to open the dancing every year." Lily understood the unspoken question hovering between them. "The twins are fine with Sarah for a few minutes," she said gently. "If you wanted to, honor that tradition." For a moment, Jackson looked as though he might retreat, might find a reason to decline the implicit invitation. Then, with a decisiveness that characterized his most important actions, he extended his hand. "Lily Morgan, would you do me the honor of this dance?" She placed her hand in his without hesitation. "I'd be delighted," Jackson read. As he led her to the area cleared for dancing, Lily was acutely aware of the eyes following them, the whispered conversations their partnership inspired. Yet when Jackson's arm circled her waist and he guided her into the first steps of the waltz, the world around them seemed to recede. "You dance beautifully," she said, genuinely surprised by his easy grace. "Mom insisted all her boys learn," he replied, the memory bringing a smile rather than the usual shadow. "Said no son of hers would be a wallflower at social functions." "She sounds wonderful." "She was," Jackson agreed, guiding her through a turn. "She would have liked you, would have loved the twins." The simple statement, delivered without artifice, contained volumes about how he saw their place in his life. Not as temporary visitors, not as obligations, but as people who belonged, with him, with this community, with this land. As the waltz continued, other couples joined them on the dance floor, but Lily remained aware only of Jackson, the steadiness of his lead, the warmth of his hand at her waist, the way his eyes never left hers. Something was shifting between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first dawn meeting. From the edge of the dance floor, Rufus watched with that uncanny focus that still occasionally unnerved them both. The rooster had spent the day moving regally through the festival, inspecting activities and accepting admiration with dignified tolerance. Now, as twilight deepened, he seemed content to observe the culmination of whatever design had brought them all together. The music drew to a close, but Jackson didn't immediately release her. Instead, he held her gaze with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Something I should have said weeks ago." Lily's heart quickened. "What is it?" Before he could respond, Emma's voice pierced the moment. "Lily, Jackson, come see what Rufus did." Exchanging a look of mingled regret and amusement, they turned to find the twins hurrying toward them, their expressions alight with excitement. "What has that bird done now?" Jackson asked, his hand finding the small of Lily's back in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. "He laid an egg," Ethan announced triumphantly, loud enough for nearby festival-goers to hear and turn with expressions of confusion. "That's impossible, sweetheart," Lily explained gently. "Roosters don't lay eggs, only hens do that." "But he did," Emma insisted, tugging at their hands. "Come see." Curious, despite their certainty that the children must be mistaken, they followed the twins to a quiet corner of the festival grounds, where Rufus stood guard over something nestled in a small hollow of straw. Dr. Chen was already there, examining whatever the rooster had produced with an expression of scientific fascination. "Ah, here are the parents now," he said, looking up with twinkling eyes. "Your remarkable bird has left you a gift." Kneeling beside the nest, Lily gasped. There, nestled in the straw, was not an egg but a small, velvet box, its surface gleaming in the lantern light. "That's not," she began, then looked up to find Jackson already kneeling beside her, his expression a mixture of amusement, nervousness, and something deeper that made her heart skip. "I had this in my pocket all day," he said softly. "Was trying to find the right moment, the right words." He glanced at Rufus, who was watching the proceedings with evident satisfaction. Seems your rooster had other ideas about timing. With careful movements, Jackson picked up the small box, then took Lily's hand in his free one. Around them, festival-goers had begun to gather, drawn by the unusual scene, but neither noticed the growing audience. "Lily Morgan," Jackson began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "A month ago, you walked onto my land at dawn with 2 sleeping children and a peculiar rooster, and nothing has been the same since. You've brought life back to Broken Spur, joy back to my days, and hope back to a future I'd stopped believing in." He opened the box to reveal a ring, not a traditional diamond, but a unique design featuring a small, perfect amber stone set in silver, with tiny copper feathers embracing it on either side. "This was Josephine's," he explained. "She left it with my mother before she died, with instructions to pass it on, quote, when the North Parcel found its rightful heir. None of us understood what she meant then." Lily's eyes filled with tears as the implications of his words, and Josephine's foresight, washed over her. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer," Jackson continued. "I know we've only known each other a short time. But I'm asking for a promise. A promise that you'll consider making this temporary arrangement permanent. That you and Emma and Ethan will stay, not as guests or workers, but as family. My family." The sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability in his usually guarded expression, touched something deep within Lily's soul. Here was a man offering not just his heart but his entire life, his land, his home, his future, to her and the children who had come to mean everything to her. "Jackson," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "I say yes," Emma interrupted, unable to contain her excitement any longer. "Say yes, Lily." A ripple of laughter went through the gathered crowd, breaking the tension of the moment. Jackson's eyes never left Lily's face, patient, hopeful, but without pressure. "The children have spoken," she said softly, a smile breaking through her tears. "And for once, I think they've got it exactly right. Yes." Jackson Reed. Yes to staying. Yes to family. Yes to whatever future we build together. With hands that trembled slightly, Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood, drawing her up with him. Their first kiss, witnessed by what appeared to be the entire population of Pine Ridge, was both a culmination and a beginning, tender yet certain, filled with promise. Applause erupted around them, along with cheers and more than a few emotional sniffles from the older residents who had known Jackson since childhood. The twins danced around them in circles of pure joy, and even Rufus seemed to puff up with pride at the successful conclusion of his mysterious mission. Dr. Chen appeared at their side, beaming with obvious delight. "Josephine would be so pleased," he said warmly. "She always did love a good love story, especially one she helped write." "Did she know?" Lily asked, still trying to process the revelation that Josephine had somehow anticipated this moment years before it happened. How could she possibly have known? The elderly veterinarian's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Josephine used to say that some things are written in the stars long before we recognize the pattern. She just had a knack for reading those patterns a little earlier than most." As the celebration continued around them, now with the added excitement of an engagement to toast, Jackson drew Lily slightly apart, his arms secure around her waist. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice low and intimate despite the surrounding noise. "Something I've been meaning to tell you about the North Parcel." "More secrets?" Lily teased, still dazed by the evening's unexpected turn. Jackson's expression grew serious. "Not a secret, exactly. More possibility. The cabin on your land, Josephine always said it was placed precisely where it is for a reason. The alignment with the mountains, the way the light hits at dawn and dusk." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he continued carefully, "that if you wanted, we could build there, not just repair the cabin but create something new. A proper home, with room for the twins to grow, for our family to expand if that's what we decide." He paused, gauging her reaction. "The main house has a lot of memories, not all of them easy. But the north parcel, that could be our fresh start together. The offer touched Lily deeply. This proud, traditional man was willing to leave his family home, to build something new that would be truly theirs rather than a legacy he had inherited. "What about the ranch operations?" she asked. Practical even in this emotional moment. The main house could become the business center, office space, storage, maybe even rooms for the seasonal hands, Jackson explained, having clearly given this considerable thought. "We'd still be close enough to manage everything, but we'd have our own place, one we created together." The vision he painted was compelling. A new home rising from Josephine's land, built with intention and love, a true melding of their separate legacies into something shared. "I'd like that," Lily said softly. "To build something that's ours from the foundation up." Jackson's smile, rare and transformative, illuminated his features. "Then that's what we'll do." As they rejoined the celebration, accepting congratulations and well wishes from the community that had so readily embraced them, Lily spotted Rufus perched on a nearby fence post, his iridescent feathers gleaming in the lantern light. The rooster met her gaze with that uncanny intelligence that still occasionally unnerved her, and for a brief, fanciful moment, she could have sworn he nodded in approval. "Thank you," she whispered to the bird that had led her to this place, this man, this future. And as if in response to her gratitude, as if finally satisfied that his mission was complete, Rufus threw back his magnificent head and crowed for the first time since Portland, a sound of triumph and homecoming that rose above the music and laughter, echoing across the town square and into the vast Montana night. The twins ran to him in delight, their new friends following, and Jackson's arm tightened around Lily's waist as they watched the scene unfold. "Welcome home," he murmured against her hair. "Home," Lily repeated, the word no longer an abstract concept but a concrete reality. This land, these people, this man beside her. After so much loss and uncertainty, they had found their way to where they belonged, guided by the most unlikely of messengers. And as stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, Lily knew with bone-deep certainty that Josephine had been right all along. Some things truly were written in patterns most couldn't see, connections woven through time and space, waiting only for the courage to follow where they led. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.